Record.
Munaimanta, with love, an offering of a quintuta for the sharing of Sami, the animating essence that circulates throughout the multiple dimensions known to cosmic creation, honored and revered as the ethos of the Andean people. This quintu shall be offered in invocation, evocation, and decree to our Apus, to our Pacha, and to Mama Pacha, the natural world that sustains us as passers-by on this extraordinary planet we call Gaia. Open your hearts, expand your mind, relax your body, and receive the Sami shared through this embodiment of Andean mystical truth and shamanic reality. Hampikpa, Chaskapachamanta, Yachaisaspa, Hiari, Hatun Wilka, Hanak Pachamanta Saiwa, Rikhurik, Hatun Wilka, Inkikiaruna, Chaskaruna, Pachamamaruna, Hampui Hampui. Receive the essence conveyed with this cocaquinto into your hearts and allow the unification of Munai, compassive, unadulterated love and deep caring, together with Yachai, wisdom as lived experience of encounter with a living sentient cosmos, and Yankai, right action, a path of healing service to the 7 generations, all embodied in this 3 integration of the shamanic universe known to our Andean ancestral peoples of Peru. Thank you, my beloved brother, for opening up this space to explore the multidimensionality of our indigenous peoples' immersion into otherworldly realities that unfortunately, sadly, our postmodern, technologically based world has, for the most part, denied. As you well know, our indigenous peoples of the world are probably the most well acquainted, not only with communication, but travel that is of an interstellar and other dimensional nature. And it is that cosmic culture from the past that I am dedicated to revitalizing in the lives of our contemporary shamanic aspirants of the great work. So I've got some stories to tell, some songs to sing, and some medicine to share.
Well, I'm just overjoyed and delighted to have you back on the show, Oscar, and so excited to talk about this topic that is deep and mysterious and of great interest to me. And I think, for contemporary practitioners, especially as we look around at the state of the world, we see exactly why we need to strengthen our connection to Earth and draw on Earth wisdom, because we see the pollution, what we've done to our mountains and our rivers, what we've done to our communities. And yet it feels to me, and I can't quite put into words why this feels this way, but it feels like we also need equally to concentrate on the wisdom that comes to us from above, and to have this balance of Earth and stars just as we have them in our own beings. So it feels in some ways we're even more cut off from our ancient shamanic lineages of star wisdom than we are from our wisdom around connecting with the earth and the spirits of the earth. Uh, so how do you see that current situation? Where are we in terms of rediscovering this ancient wisdom? What do we need to do in order to make it come alive for us, not just as an intellectual curiosity, but to have the stars talk to us, to feel the energies coming from above, to reconnect with the sacred voices that guided our ancestors so beautifully?
Wonderful question, and brilliantly articulated, my good brother. Well, as most of the people sharing this virtual transmission of dialogue will know and experience, to be able to inform any type of earth-centered healing pursuit, whether it is a regenerative ecology for our planet, or some healing for the social disruption that is ubiquitous throughout the world, or to truly wake up humanity to its common experience as a unifying field of relationships with a much broader and greater reality than just their own individual concerns of survival on the planet, requires us to connect and commune with a living sentient cosmos, requires our sciences and our political systems and all of our institutions of learning, our great educational centers, to embody a cosmic cultural focus within the training of all future servants in the multidisciplinary fields that are available to modern scientific inquiry and technological innovation. So therefore, we cannot progress into the world without returning to an understanding of the sanctity of life and embodying what we've been estranged from, which are the sacred dimensions that are inherent in life, which our indigenous shamanic peoples take for granted. I don't know of any better population on this planet than the traditional shamanic peoples of today that have inherited these wisdoms and practices from their ancestral origins to guide the direction of humankind and ensure our survival here on Earth without necessarily needing to colonize other planets. The most important thing in my experience over these many moons, being an initiated apprentice and practitioner and teacher of Andean shamanic arts and cosmovision, is that our traditional peoples are the best guides we have to take us into realms of awareness, states of consciousness, in which we can easily visit other worlds, other planets, without necessarily having to spend billions of dollars on rocket fuel and all of these external ways of trying to justify why we must migrate beyond Earth because of the mess that we've created as a human species on Earth. It's insane what we are doing and the amount of garbage that is floating around beyond our atmosphere in near orbit. There's just so much pollution of the earth, the skies, and most importantly of the human psyche, that the approach to experiencing reverence and communion based on empathy with a living sentient cosmos, replete of light beings and luminous guides that can take on any form that will serve to enhance one's own identification as light, oneself. And therefore, ultimately, just like the earth creates itself out of its own self, it is autopoietic, poiesis. It's a term that the biologists Maturana and Varela, the Chilean biologists, proposed as a principle of life, that it is autopoietic, meaning self-creating and self-regulating. If you notice, cosmic consciousness is the same. And out of consciousness itself, there is a gradation of expression of the material phenomenal world, not the other way around. Modern science, as you well know, and everybody listening to this well knows, has gotten things backwards, because they are claiming that from a non-sentient, totally devoid of consciousness rock, third rock from the sun, all life emerged. Either it was seeded here through panspermia or directed panspermia, or it just randomly occurred and is subject to Darwinian strategies of survival, which is really BS, belief systems that have misled us intensely. So I propose this, my good brother. I propose us to enter into a lived experience of human as a multidimensional portal for the transit between worlds that is open to beings that all along have been here reminding us that they are our future. And to own that as what our purpose is on this earth, to birth ourselves as light, as a reflection of the divine light that is at the source of everything that we know and still shall learn to experience as self, capital S. That's a lot of words to answer your question, brother.
Well, I hear this not only in these indigenous traditions, but even, say, in the Bible, where Adam is made in God's image and also of earth, of clay. So you have this dual nature of the human in so many different traditions as being a reflection of the divine consciousness, and also as a being who comes from and is made from the things of earth. And when you were talking about, if we were to colonize the stars, would that get us any closer to the stars than we are right now? I mean, if we went there with the same sort of rational mind and orientation that we bring to things here, then we might arrive on these distant planets, measure things, weigh things, figure out all the distances. But have we really encountered the stars by going there, or can we encounter them in a way much more truly right here in our own bodies once we begin to realize that we do have this seemingly dual nature of being both of the earth and being guided by and a reflection of this light that sustains the universe?
Well, as you well know, our ancestral shamanic cultures have been doing this for millennia, what you are proposing. It is the breaking up of the wholeness that is life as a sacred gift into its component parts that has created the problem of separation between humanity and the rest of the web of life, and therefore, intoxicated us with the illusion that we are a dominant species and that we are made in the image of this great anthropomorphic creator God that is usually masculine, that is still entrenched within our global psyche. But there's a change. I'm very optimistic. I see alternative modes of perceiving the fullness that is reality, quotes unquotes, occurring with children that are born with the ability to have deep empathy and deep ability to communicate that empathy, born with clairvoyance and clairsentience and clairaudience that is not being suppressed by the dominant culture anymore, that is being offered an avenue to be expressed through the arts and through spending more and more time with the living natural world, which is fundamental to a return to any type of star wisdom, because the earth is made of stardust. And what is stardust but basically expressions of light? That's all that we are. We are theophantic, photonic uh, constellations of, of matter that at its essence is all just mind stuff. You know, Edward Schrodinger, the famous physicist, there's a beautiful quote of his that says, the physicist is the atom's way of getting to know itself. You know, it's so, you know, when we developed all these incredible mechanistic, uh, reductionistic based sciences to break apart the universe and then create instruments and machines that will make our lives easier, what we did simultaneously is that we took the consciousness that was at the core of those innovations out of the equation. So now we've ended up with a universe devoid of consciousness. Shamanic peoples understand that that's insane. That how can there not be a sentient, intelligent universe or multiverse, whatever you want to call it, cosmos, because it's only out of consciousness that matter can emerge, not the other way around. Consciousness is not going to come out of a physical brain. Consciousness is permanent, ever present, not subject to entropy, not subject to chaos, not subject to breakdown. That's only the undisciplined mind. And through the rituals and arts, shamanic healing arts of our original peoples, especially those of the Andes that both of us revere and love so much, it puts us into that zone in which we are able to truly experience ourselves as beyond form, fearlessly free to be all worlds, times, and places that summon me.
You know, you had that quote from Schrodinger that it's through the physicist that the atom gets to know itself. And it seems also in a way that it's through the human being, through this particular form, that spirit gets to know itself, because we can make these conscious choices of how we want to navigate the world, what we're going to be open to, how we want to orient.
Correct. In a nutshell, this is what shamanic star wisdom is as a practice. The embodiment of these three principles: as above, so below, as within, so without, as self, so cosmos. Very simple. We have the superior coming into the inferior. As spirit mirrors matter, spirit is a subtle form of matter, and matter is a dense form of spirit. It's all vibrational frequency, right? So the more expanded our awareness, the more limitless our dreaming, the easier it is to reconcile spirit and matter as one being. Then realize that your internal world of dreams, of imaginal landscapes, of epiphanies, of visions, of inspired book writing and songwriting and rattle making, and all these things that are given form in the world really begin with an internal experience that we, through our language and through our presence, beget reality, give form to this world. And ultimately, we identify ourselves as self, as a mirror of cosmos, of creation's dreaming. Now, to live those principles is difficult. It's daunting because it requires taking huge responsibility for your words, your thoughts, your actions, your choices in life as the source of power to either create or destroy. And it's not easy for everybody to do that. It requires really an impeccable level of commitment to mindful presence so that your words never create dissonance, hurt, and contaminate another's experience of themselves. And that your thoughts are always of the most elevated and loving nature. and that your actions are always based on how is it going to impact generations way after I'm not here. It's a life that requires really being on top of things and being in touch with your own inner power to affect change and influence the wider social order in which we live. Yet as a shamanic collective, we're on target. I'm very, very optimistic, brother.
Let me ask you a couple of things here. One thing that occurs to me is that the orientation that the rational mind takes toward everything, which is black and white, it's either this or it's that, is not an orientation that's ever going to get us any closer to the mystery of our being. It seems like there has to be a reorientation toward, first of all, being comfortable with mystery, with not knowing, with following subtle signs, and also seeing this either or as not large enough, that we are always both and. We're in this human form, we have our stories, we have our loves and our lives, and we also have this continuous access to the infinite, outside of time, outside of space, continuous access to these beings much vaster than ourselves.
Duality is not necessarily bad, as long as it's balanced. All shamanic work based on Damasque curanderismo, or using a mesa, using an altar ground, is inherently a balanced dualism. You need to learn how to work the left and the right and walk them in order to walk the middle field, right? So duality is different than dualism. Duality separates, dualism integrates. Okay, so therefore it's okay, because it's inherent in all of the expressions of life, that there are gender differences and that there's masculine and feminine, you know, inner and outer biological expressions of who we are. And those can be put to great use, I feel, as long as they don't become politicized and made into tools of coercion and tools of domination, right? Now, I find myself, when I journey beyond the physical plane, that I encounter an empyrean or a heavenly realm in which everything is harmonized. And this may be because I'm influenced by the notion of what the Hanakpacha is to our Andean shamanic peoples, which is the same realm or bardo or state of consciousness like the earth plane. The only difference is that there's no illness, there's no hunger, there's no pain, there's no suffering, right? But you still have to get up every day and work your fields and feed your family and take on all those responsibilities like we have here on earth. Yet you're free of the suffering of the flesh. So in a way, it's a Gnostic's paradise, right? We have been liberated from the constraints of our physical body. And at the same time, it is mirrored in my life on earth. The more I hang out in this place of liberated bodily presence, the more my life in the three-dimensional realm that is extended into the fourth dimension of time through motion becomes harmonized. So I'm experiencing the same thing that the Inca and pre-Inca peoples of Peru strive to do all along, which was to make the earth a mirror of the heavens, to build their temple sites, to build their Seke matrix, their ley lines or spirit power pathways as a mirror of what they understood the web in the sky to be. So earth and sky become one and the same within one's experience of self as cosmos, as creation as a whole. Therefore, duality, what's that? It's in our capable hands as aspirants of the great work, to live a life in which separation becomes wholeness, guided and motivated by the transformation of fear into love. The antidote is to surrender all fear of duality, of right, of wrong, of anything that makes you feel less than.
When we navigate the world in that way, one of the things that seems to me to happen as I'm kind of tracking in my own body as I'm listening to you is we have these sacred landscapes outside us. And just as they have their ley lines and their power spots where those places intersect, the waka, places where the earth energy and sky energy come together, it seems like we have those own places, energetic places of power within our own body systems, not even simply the chakras, but places in our own sort of emotional and developmental landscape where certain constellations of people, events, places come together. And suddenly in those moments, we have access to this vertical axis of heaven and earth.
Yes, I agree.
So how do we use that internal somatic experience as a map that helps us integrate or invite in these energies that seem to be external as well, I guess would be the question.
By growing corn and potatoes with that experience, by giving them form, by making things like this, by continuing to bring beauty into the world. That is how, in my humble opinion, the arts really are going to transform this planet, this world, the human psyche at a global level. It is through moving into that part of your body that is that constellation of very ancestral, forgotten, and repressed memories of who you were as a soul in past lives on this earth and other worlds. And if it is very powerful at a somatic level, it serves as a geomantic map in which you can go into that experience and through feeling, through emotion, allow it to lead you, just like a river would end up into the great cosmic oceanic field, to lead you into that larger experience of who you have been for multiple lifetimes, and be able to glean the wisdom and the realizations and great levels of awareness that you have attained in the past. Although in my own experience, it's already with you now. Sometimes we just forget, and that is why painting, sculpting, drawing, dancing, making love, cooking, anything that can give form through a passionate relationship with what one seeks as an alliance with the beauty that is inherent in the creative act itself, is so important for transforming the phenomenal world that surrounds us.
Well, yeah, that kind of creating is always a kind of remembering as well. And to put ourselves in those positions where, whether it's through song or dance or connection with another person, making something where we're not quite sure what we're doing, but we're listening to something and following it. So many people say, well, I don't receive guidance. And I'm not sure if I believe that's true for anybody. We might not be very good at hearing it clearly, or even more so at responding immediately and trusting it. But I think it's there for everyone. And the more that we can carry it out through those kinds of activities, through giving ourselves over to creation with spirit guiding the way, the more we sort of fine tune that band of our frequency receiver so that we get more guidance.
Exactly. And I would recommend those people who say that they don't receive guidance to ask themselves first, who's the I they're talking about? You know, they're referring to their personality, you know, to a construct of egocentric attitudes, really, that have nothing to do with the real guidance that is received by the I am, you know, by the fullness of their being. So guidance is there. It's eternal. It's constant. All you need to do is still yourselves, silence, and moments of meditative centering every day is the sadhana, is the shamanic star wisdom sadhana. For you share the beginning of creation when you stop and sit and dissolve. And that's where the guidance emerges out from. That shunyata, that empty fullness. There's not one healing ritual, there's not one payment to the earth that is done in the coast, Andes, or jungle of Peru without first stopping everything and aligning yourself. Once you commune, then you can consecrate. Once you consecrate, then you can compose the field. Once you compose, then you connect with the multiple forces, powers, and sentient beings that abound. And once you do that, cooperation to gestate a new world is made patent.
My experience is that guidance from different beings has a different flavor. You know, when I'm talking to an Apu, there's a certain flavor. If it's Veronica, it's different than Alsangate. And if I'm receiving information from star beings, it's yet another flavor. Can you talk about the particular flavor or transmission of star wisdom as opposed to communing with some of the other beings in creation, and how those might have a different flavor or a different transmission?
Well, personally, I don't experience that much of a difference,
Mm-hmm.
because to me, an Apu is a star relative. You know, the Istria, or the Estrella, or the Apugia, the being, the consciousness, the awareness that is within a mountain deity, is always, based on my own initiation into these cosmologies, is linked to a particular star presence, right? So, and as you well know, in the Andes, we have this both vertical, synchronic, and horizontal diachronic idea of time-space, of space-time. So if you, let's say, are doing some Kintu Sami circulation to an Apu, to keep the Sami flowing and circulating between your life and the earth and the divinity that is in the Apu, you're doing that, and at the same time, the flavor of that particular Apu has already been embedded in your lived experience, having grown up in a particular ayu that is obeisant to the maintenance of that Apu's sanctity, right? So they have their ritual duties that involve pilgrimage to the Apu and payments to the Apu, and at times sacrifices to the Apu. Now, without that generosity of self in relationship to these non-human beings, there'd be a lot of different experiences of contact. Right. Yet it's coming from a totally generous offering of oneself as a vehicle for the expression of Sami, of animating essence, into the sacred landscape shrine, into the mountain, into the river, into the apacheta, into whatever, right? At that point, I personally don't experience that difference of a flavor. I experience myself just being a hollow bone, allowing the grace that is being on this magnificent earth to continue to empower the sustenance and regeneration of all life on planet, right? So I'm not really answering your question. I'm exploring within myself why it is that I, don't experience that much of a variation between my communion with an Apu or my communion right now with you. You are an Apu at this particular moment because you are the embodiment of divinity that is mirroring my own divinity at this point. So I bow to you, my Apu brother. And I mean it.
I'm not even sure what question can follow that.
I would like the opportunity to share with our viewing audience the little letter that you wrote me upon sending. How would you feel about this? It's a perfect example of what we're talking about. So I'd like you all to, first of all, look at this magnificent medicine embodiment in the form of a star. Look at this. Camasquero voy llamando tus encantos. Curandero voy llamando tus virtudes. Guachumero voy llamando tus remedios. Curandero, camasquero, guachumero, buen maestro. So this was gifted to me by the person that is my Apu mirror right in front. And he sent me this little letter that I'd like to read all of you so you know what I mean by saying when we grow corn and potatoes, it's the best way to enter into divine communion with creation's dreaming as one's wholeness of self. And this is the process. To my good brother Oscar, I have been making this rattle for you for quite some time now, since we first started talking about star wisdom teachings more than a year ago. This was written on November 5th, 2017. There were a lot of stops and starts along the way. Perfect, like any pilgrimage, right? But I think it's ready to send now, just before your summit talk on star wisdom. My hope was to bring in the elements in a strong way and include both earth and sky in the materials for the rattle. I chose buffalo for the hide, as white buffalo calf woman is named in Lakota legend as the youngest of the 7 sisters of the Pleiades. In parentheses, the filling is made of glass beads in rainbow colors, end of parentheses. The front piece of hide is from the backbone of the animal. Right there. And the vertical stripe would have pointed straight up toward the heavens. Yet the roughness comes from the movement of hide over bone and from rolling and rubbing against the earth. Even your letters to me are just so spot on, brother. The handle is the root of the giant cottonwood on the banks of the Pudra River that was felled by flooding several years back. I wrote prayers on paper and burned them, then mixed the ash with charcoal to stain the wood. The leather handle wrap comes from a half hide that my brother David has owned for many years. I made the Kabuchan pipestone from some scrap I have carried a long time. I love the way the pink marbling looks almost like constellations. And the piece of metal above the stone is a slice of the Campo de Cielo meteorite found in Argentina to represent the energies of the star beings. I didn't want to glue it to the pipestone, so I stalled there for several months until I met a woman, Emily, who is a jeweler and offered to hammer set the meteor in sterling silver. I think it is the most beautiful part of the whole rattle. Finally, the feathers come from a great horned owl I found along the interstate 2 winters ago. You can easily untie them when needed, but I wanted to include their medicine too, as owl has been an important source of guidance for me. So this project is really both a celebration of the potency of ancestral star wisdom and its expression in the world. And I thank you for your guidance and friendship along the path. Much love, Mitchell. May the medicine and that writing embodied in the creation of this sacred medicine item, artifact, be transmitted through this screen into the soul space of everybody accompanying us on our journey of exploration of shamanic star wisdom. For you are the prime example, a bona fide expression of what it means to walk with star wisdom presence on this planet. Thank you so much for being in my life.
Oh, to you too, Oscar. And isn't it appropriate that I answered my own question 2.5 years before I asked it?
That is why I said, I've got to read this.
But that's the way it goes, isn't it? I mean, when we're tuned in and we're listening, then, you know, my question wasn't about, hey, is making this rattle going to make Mitchell happy? Or, you know, what techniques do I use? It was like waiting, following the guidance, doing the next thing, waiting when it's right, doing the next thing. And that, you know, if it's true of a rattle, it's also true of how we get through this life, taking the next step, looking around, feeling our way into it, taking another. And that seems like the way to stay in touch with ourselves as an expression of love, and not getting caught up in the concerns of the personality or the ego of, am I on the right path? Is this all working the way it's supposed to? What's the outcome going to be? We don't know.
Which are very natural and normal questions that people on the path, you know, sometimes need to address. Ultimately, shamanism is a nature venerating, right? Spirit befriending, soul vivifying, healing vocation. Nature, spirit, soul. After that, technology and physical journey to the stars. But before that, nature, spirit, soul.
So for anyone listening who has a question about, okay, I really want to call this wisdom in, I want to really feel my way into my own connection with the star beings, with the ancestors from beyond this planet, where would you suggest they begin?
There are two very simple approaches that anybody can take. The first is, if you are comfortable with pronouncing these Quechua words, I suggest you try to, if not, just use the English equivalent. And I would say Kanchay, K''ANCHAY, Munay, MUNAY, Pachamama, PACHAMAMA, Hunyui, HUN with the tilde, UY, and Nyokani, NOQANI. Light, love, earth, united, I am. Light from the heavenly celestial realms. Love from the eternal heart space realm. Pachamama from the middle earth realm, united as the self, I am. And so what I suggest that people do is they stand up barefoot outdoors, align themselves through their crown with the starlight that is ever present in the heavenly realms. Feel the tingling, the activation of your higher center, of your Hananguma, your Sahasrara chakra. You can feel that even at this moment by bringing just simple awareness to that higher center. Take a few deep breaths. Feet together, heels together, feet slightly apart, palms open to the heavens. Right step forward, say light. Left step, love. Another right step, earth. Another left step, united, and then bring both feet together in unison, I am. And you just walk a very simple, slow, almost like Zen-like rock garden circumambulation, just weaving yourself upon the softness of the living earth barefoot, aligning yourself with that decree of light, love, earth, united, I, capital I, am, capital A-M. And over time, all of the distractions and the rickety, disturbing monkey mind and stinking thinking that is characteristic of our technologically wired era will start to dissolve and flow away from your lived experience. It's a very powerful sadhana. That would I recommend, brother. Simple. The other one, I will share next time.
Well, I think you've given people pretty much a lot of stuff to contemplate here, more than they can probably get through in a lifetime. So
a little dose, a little sprinkling of, you know, of my disciplined imagination as to what it means to be an embodiment of the starlight that is our origin. People interested in doing a deeper apprenticeship in these arts can maybe want to join me in some of my classes. They can go to www.heartofthehealer.org and then they can see that stuff there.
well, and you have a new one coming up starting just in the next week or so, right?
On March 18th, yes. Receive the medicine from our Earth Mother Pachamama. It's a 7-week in-depth initiation into the Kamaska and Pakokuna lineages of shamanic living that I've been privileged to apprentice in Peru through the auspices of the Shift Network. You could also register for that either online through our website, or I believe you were graceful and generous enough to post it for me on.
I did. I posted the link to that initial kind of welcome call, the first 60-minute video. So I think anybody who clicks on that link can still then have the opportunity to sign up for the full course through that link.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And then there's a few in-person, you know, intensives, you know, 4 or 5 day intensives that you can also join, or immerse yourself in a 2-year, 5-part apprenticeship in the Pachacuti Mesa tradition with my sanctioned teachers, which are awesome souls themselves. So I look forward to meeting many of you at the right time. Thank you so much.
And thank you once again for being with us today, Oscar. It is always a great pleasure to talk with you.
Infinito amor, hermano y hermanas. Until next time, my beloveds.